A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Today we'll be learning understanding Azure Function App. Basically, I'm working from a long time with serverless app. So we'll be understanding two main things. It will be a quick video and queue trigger, timer trigger. Why it is used, understanding from a wider range, like when to pick which one. Okay. So before starting with these things, let me show you what is a function app. The function, what is a function app? A function app is basically a serverless function which runs without you having any setup from your end. So it is done backend by the cloud team. For Azure, it is called function app. We do have for AWS, that is Lambda, for Google Cloud. So what we'll be learning today is it's a queue trigger. What is a queue trigger? And what is a timer trigger? I'll show you in code. Basically just the how many types of trigger are there, but let's understand this from layman language. So let me show you in code itself first. Okay, so when we create, so I'm in my Visual Studio Code and will not be doing any code stuff today. I'll just be giving you a higher level understanding. So when we create, if you go to the extensions, here we'll see the Azure. Okay, Azure function. So we can install it. Once we install it, it's up here. Now to create, we need a subscription account for creating it, obviously, cloud for login. Here we'll just be seeing number of types of trigger. Okay, after that we'll be seeing what we are learning today. Let's click create trigger. Where you want to create, anywhere. So it supports lots of language, right? JavaScript, C#, Python, Java, all the other most used one. Yeah. So now we are seeing the triggers. So what are the trigger? You have a function, right? Serverless function that has some logic in it. You can connect to some other app, you can download a file, you can do something, right? Logic, right? Now by trigger we mean what is activating that function. Okay, so first type is HTTP trigger. This is widely used. So HTTP trigger simply means there's a URL. You hit the URL, it starts. Second is timer trigger. We'll learn this today. Next is blob trigger. Azure has some storage. It's called storage account. So whenever something happens, activity happens, that time some function trigger. Cosmos trigger. It's a database. Something happens in the DB. No need to go much into this, but what my point of highlighting this was, HTTP trigger is mostly used. It's a web-based URL. Okay, so you have a URL, you enter it, hit it, something will happen. That serverless function will run logic. Where is the most famous one? Queue trigger. So queue trigger will be coming into that, but understand that queue is also one of the most used trigger in today's time, and timer trigger is used. So without further ado, let's understand both of these. So because today or tomorrow, whenever you'll be using Azure cloud, this will come into picture. Function apps are, you think that serverless is everywhere now. So if you are in AWS cloud environment, Lambda will come into picture for serverless. Azure function app will come. So let us understand now. So what is a function app? Function app is a serverless function. You don't need to set up Node.js or Python function. You have a function with your logic written, it executes at some time, and that time is decided by the trigger. Okay, so now there are a couple of type of trigger we have seen already: HTTP, queue trigger, durable trigger. Durable one is the most it is used when you want Think like chaining of the functions, orchestrating it. And timer trigger is something happens at a time. Okay. So what is a queue trigger? So before that, let's understand what is a queue. You know that we stand in a line. That's a queue, right? Think a queue as a list of messages wait to be processed. There are two application A or application B, or there are two microservices of the application. Suppose payment microservice A, customer order B. So if queue is just the intermediate of the two application. For example, if application A sends message to a queue, by message you mean a data, an object with some data. You need to send some data. Then application B starts processing. Okay. So what is a queue trigger? In my today's we use microbase based architecture. If your application has payment gateway is separate piece. If it has a customer order, it's a separate piece. It has document extraction, it's a separate piece. So interacting between two of these independent application happens with the help of queue. So simple idea is that whenever one application sends a message to a queue, obviously there are SDKs, drivers, packages to interact with them. But if application is send message to this queue, suppose a queue, payment queue, for example, then the inside that function which is connected, that will trigger, that will call the another service, payment microservice. Okay. So how queue trigger works? Queue, we now know what is a queue. Think of it as a list where message can wait to be processed. If you hit 10 messages, okay, so it is there waiting until and unless it is executed. Trigger. So when a new message is added to the list, the trigger acts like a doorbell ringing. And function, every trigger will call some function. That's a serverless function. Okay. Now let us understand in real-time example. So before going into the example, just understand whenever a message is triggered to a specific queue, its connected function will run. That's it. That's a queue trigger. Now let's see a simple example, real-time example. We use lots of websites these days. Yeah, Amazon, Flipkart, lots of apps are there. So let's take a scenario. Processing order. You did one. Okay. You bought 2 t-shirts for yourself. You clicked on the click order. So what will happen? A customer places an order. The order list are added to the message to a queue. Think of it as a to-do list. Now Azure queue triggers detects the new message in the queue. It automatically runs the code to process, like confirming, updating inventory, sending a receipt email. So when you place an order, something will goes to the queue. Whenever a message go to the queue, it's connected function app will run, and that function app will have right logic. Okay. Example 2, image processing. A company that allows users to upload images for editing. Now for example, a person comes to your app. A user uploads an image for editing. Now whenever that image is uploaded, a message with image detail is placed in the queue. That's a purpose. That's a business requirement. For example, you want something to happen when you upload in a queue. Okay. So that time, once it's connected, now queue trigger will trigger to this message. It automatically runs the process the image, such as applying filter, resizing. What example I can tell you next? For example, you upload a document. When you upload a document to a specific queue, for example, you upload to the payment queue. You bought a art. Okay. Art. Suppose you are an art lover. You bought one art. Once you clicked it, goes to the payment queue. Now the payment queue has a function that will redirect you to the payment gateway page. how this is how it happens. Buy image, buy art. When you click it in your eBay site, MSN site, that time message goes to the queue, and behind the scene, now your payment page starts, loads that your card details, all those things. Now that's all about the queue trigger. So what is a queue trigger? Whenever a message goes to the queue, its connected function will call. It's up to you, your business requirement, your application requirement, what to do with it. Clicking on a customer order sends mail to the user confirmed, or clicking your art or anything you are buying will process you to the buy now. If you click the buy now button, it will send message to the buy now queue, and the job of that queue is to send you now to the what message you will send to the queue, what you are buying, variant, cost, suppose 20,000 or $10 or 500 rupees, anything. It will go to the queue, and those details will go to the payment gateway page, amount to be processed. So that's all about the queue trigger. And let's understand timer trigger. So what's a timer trigger? Timer trigger is something that runs, you want to do at a specific time, either at a specific time or an interval of time. Okay, for example, every day 24 o'clock, I mean, what example we can learn? Suppose at every 6 p.m. evening you do one backup. Okay, so it runs, you know that you have set that timing, and it will run. The timer trigger is same as the queue trigger with one difference. Now timer trigger can apply to the queue as well. So what we are doing is like you don't want to run so if you are using queue type trigger, you are using message goes to the queue, instantly that function is processed, executed. With timer trigger, queue trigger, what you do is that suppose you have hit 5-6 times and your 5-6 messages are there in your queue to be processed. Now timer trigger will run after every 10-30 seconds. Suppose we set timing to run after 30 seconds or 1 day or 1 hour. After that specific time, all your message will be processed. Now it is not dedicated to queue trigger only. It can be used in various ways. The idea is to be run in a specific time or some interval. Example, daily backup. You want a code to take one backup at 2 a.m. The trigger will activate. Scenario to sending reminders. We get mails right every morning. Complete your assignments or whatever. Complete your some things are assigned to be done, right? So daily reminder which we get every morning when we go login. Those are set by a timer trigger every morning, and that happy birthday mail will come. Those to-do task will come, timesheet filling will come. Everything is a reminder set to timer trigger. Regular data cleanup. So timer trigger, think of it as an alarm clock. It choose the time interval. It can be a recurring alarm, like run after every 10 minutes. It can be a one-time alarm, stop at 6 p.m. only. So now we understand the difference between the two type of function app. So there's another one which is HTTP trigger. So HTTP trigger is just the URL. If you hit the URL, that function will execute. We are not discussing now. Queue trigger is just whenever message go to the queue, it's dependent connected function will run. Timer trigger is something which will run at a specific. I think we have covered pretty everything we need to know. That's all for this video.